It started with silence, a long endless silence that stretched across the black sea of space. Then one night the silence broke. At first it was faint, like static, a strange uneven sound flickering through the deep space communication bands. The signal repeated, distorted by the void, echoing between satellites and listening posts. The operators on the lunar relay station leaned forward, trying to make sense of it. It wasn't words. It wasn't alien language. It was something else. Laughter, human laughter. At first they thought it was interference, as maybe a corrupted audio file looping through the system. But as they filtered the frequencies, the truth became clear. The laughter wasn't coming from one place. It was coming from everywhere. From orbiting ships, from ground bases, from every open communication channel on Earth. 1,000 human voices, laughing. And above the pale curve of Earth, the Valkyrian fleet hung like a storm, massive. Silver-black ships that blotted out the stars. The Valkyrians were masters of the mind. For 10,000 years, their telepathic control had brought entire civilizations to their knees. They didn't need to fire weapons. They simply reached into a creature's mind, whispered a single thought. Submit. And every will bent to their command. They had arrived at Earth expecting the same. The invasion had begun 12 hours earlier. Every human mind should have fallen silent by now, their thoughts folded neatly into Valkyrian control. But instead, the aliens were hearing something impossible. Laughter on the command bridge of the Valkyrian flagship, the Dominion of Thought. The alien commander Jator watched the holodisplay with disbelief. "Report," he hissed through the psychic link. His officers responded in unison, their thoughts sharp and panicked. Control fields active, planetary frequencies saturated, but resistance continues. Jator's eyelids tightened, his tendrils twitching in irritation. Resistance? No, that was impossible. Their control waves could shatter the mind of a god. He expanded his psychic senses, reaching down toward the blue planet below. He felt millions of human minds, and chaotic, bright, noisy, and then that sound again, laughter. It struck him like a wave. Loud, uncontrolled, echoing through every psychic frequency. He recoiled. The laughter wasn't just sound, and it had weight. It rippled through his thoughts, distorting the flow of telepathic energy. The sound carried emotion, defiance, mockery, madness. Something primal stirred inside him. For the first time in his long existence, Jator felt uncertainty. On the surface of Earth, chaos reigned, but not the kind the Valkyrians had planned. At Earth Defense Command, alarms blared as officers struggled to hold communications. The alien psychic waves had flooded the air, shorting systems and confusing sensors. But somehow the soldiers were laughing. Lieutenant Mara Jensen gripped her console, shaking her head as giggles escaped her throat. "Commander, I can't stop laughing," she gasped, tears streaming down her cheeks. Her commanding officer frowned, but even his lips were trembling in amusement. "What's happening to us?" The psychic attack should have crushed their will, but instead it triggered something strange. The human brain refused to collapse. Instead it reacted with wild emotional surges, joy, absurdity, hysterical laughter. In the hangars, pilots strapped into their fighters, still laughing. "Guess the aliens want to mind control us?" One pilot shouted over the comms, his voice full of amusement. "Let them try. Maybe they'll learn how to dance next." The pilots roared with laughter as their engines ignited, streaking into the sky above the clouds. The battle was chaos. Plasma beams slashing through the atmosphere, missiles spiraling toward alien shields. The Valkyrians were efficient, precise, until the laughter spread. Their psychic communication channels became filled with human voices. Not screams, not prayers, but jokes, taunts, and laughter. On board the Valkyrian ship Mindspire, a telepathic lieutenant tried to maintain focus. "Their thoughts are unstable," he sent to his superior. "They resist logic. I can't predict their responses. Strengthen the control field." Jator commanded. "Crush their thoughts." They did. The fleet's psychic amplifiers glowed, sending waves of domination toward Earth. But the result wasn't submission. It was a chorus of laughter that shook the very void. Across every human frequency, a single phrase began to spread, repeated in countless accents and voices. "They think they can control us?" The phrase bounced between orbiting satellites, looping through open channels, becoming a chant, a joke that carried power. Every Valkyrian who heard it felt it echo inside their skulls, twisting their thoughts, breaking the rhythm of their control. It was like trying to think while someone told a joke that you couldn't stop understanding. For the first time in recorded history, the Valkyrians felt fear. Jator's thoughts trembled. He tried to silence the noise, but the laughter slipped through every barrier. He looked at the holographic projection of Earth, the blue planet now glowing with unpredictable psychic patterns. "This world is cursed," one of his aides whispered through the link. "No," Jator replied slowly. "It's not cursed, it's—" Laughing, he extended his mind once more, trying to touch a single human consciousness directly. He found one, a soldier somewhere on the surface, a young woman standing in a ruined city, weapon in hand. He reached into her mind. "You will kneel," he commanded silently. But her reply wasn't fear or resistance. It was a small, amused thought that rippled back through the connection. "Kneel. You first." Then came the laughter again, bright and unstoppable. Jator's psychic control shattered like glass. The feedback tore through his own mind, forcing him to his knees on the bridge. The other Valkyrians felt it too, that unstoppable wave of humor, that chaotic joy. All across the fleet, alien minds broke. Some screamed. Others simply froze, unable to process what was happening. Their perfect telepathic order turned to confusion and panic. And all the while, from Earth's surface to orbit, humanity's laughter echoed, wild, fearless, alive. The Valkyrians had come to enslave a species. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous. A species that found strength in madness, courage in chaos, and hope in humor. As the first battle ended, one truth became clear. Humanity wasn't just surviving. They were enjoying it, and in the cold silence of space, the laughter kept echoing. Long after the battle ended, it would still be heard, the sound that made the conquerors tremble. The sound of humanity refusing to bow, the sound of laughter in the dark. The Valkyrian fleet drifted in silent confusion above Earth. Their control fields pulsed with psychic power, waves of thought energy rippling across the planet's surface. Yet humanity refused to fall. It made no sense. Every world they had conquered before had broken within minutes. Entire species had knelt in perfect silence, their minds folded like pages under Valkyrian will. But the humans, they laughed. They joked. They mocked the voice of command itself. What the Valkyrians didn't know was that their perfect weapon, their telepathic domination, was useless against the chaos that lived inside the human brain. On the flagship Dominion of Thought, Commander Jator stood in the psychic chamber, surrounded by glowing orbs of energy, each one linked to a different continent on Earth. He could feel millions of human thoughts below, noisy, wild, untamed. They refused to obey any pattern. "Increase the field power," he ordered through the hive mind. "Break their unity." The telepaths obeyed, their minds focusing as the control waves intensified, striking Earth like invisible lightning. For a moment it seemed to work. Human thoughts flickered, blurred, then twisted. Instead of submission, Jator felt something else flood the psychic channels. Nonsense. Words with no meaning, flashes of emotion that didn't fit together. He heard random music, people singing, someone shouting "banana," in the middle of a psychic command. It made no sense. The signal was collapsing. A telepathic scientist, Jal, turned toward his commander, his skin dim with stress. "The human brain patterns are unstable, Commander," he said through the link. "Our influence enters but does not stay. Their minds distorted." Jator's thoughts sharpened. "Explain." Jal hesitated. "They don't resist in the traditional way. They bend it, twist it until it breaks." Jator reached deeper into the psychic network, touching hundreds of human minds at once. What he found shocked him. The humans weren't afraid, they were enjoying it. The sensation of alien minds pressing against theirs triggered laughter, memories, imagination. Their mental chaos swallowed the psychic command like a black hole devouring light. Every order turned into something absurd. When the Valkyrians projected "obey," a soldier heard "do a dance." When they said "surrender," a pilot shouted "sure, after I finish my pizza." The psychic feedback loop filled with endless noise and laughter. Jator staggered, his mind ringing with confusion. This is impossible. Their cognitive centers should collapse. but Giles' response chilled him. "Commander, I believe their laughter is protection, a defense mechanism. It converts pain into energy. Their emotions don't follow logic." The words made no sense to a species that lived through perfect mental order. Valkyrians controlled their thoughts with precision, eliminating emotion long ago. They had forgotten what chaos felt like. On Earth, chaos was everything. Soldiers joked while reloading weapons, engineers sang inside burning stations, and pilots laughed in the middle of plasma storms. The psychic field that was meant to enslave them had instead united them through humor. A strange phrase began spreading among the human forces: "If they can hear our thoughts, let's give them a good show." The laughter grew, infecting even the communication systems. Every human transmission carried it. Short bursts of joy, random jokes, sarcastic taunts. In orbit, Valkyrian telepaths started breaking. Their perfect concentration wavered. A few began to giggle, an alien sound, harsh and broken. Their minds couldn't process the emotional surge. One officer screamed through the link, "The noise! I can't think!" and collapsed. Jato turned to Jal in disbelief. "They are infecting us." Jal nodded slowly. "Humor is spreading through the link. It's a viral thought pattern. Once experienced, it cannot be erased." The commander slammed his mental barriers shut, isolating himself from the hive, but the damage was done. Across the fleet, Valkyrians clutched their heads, overwhelmed by absurd human images and nonsensical ideas. Cats in helmets, clowns dancing, laughter echoing through their disciplined minds. For creatures who had never known humor, it was pure chaos. Their psychic balance began to collapse. Ships drifted off course as crews lost control of their minds. Jato tried to restore order. "Silence your minds. Block them out." But it was too late. Every time they tried to suppress the human signal, it came back louder, stranger, funnier. The human brain, unpredictable and irrational, turned their greatest weapon into a reflection of their own weakness. Giles stared into the void, realization dawning. "Commander!" "The weapon has failed. Their laughter, it neutralizes us. They are immune to control." Jato wanted to deny it, to believe it was temporary, but even his thoughts began to tremble. Echoes of human laughter rippled through the psychic link, crawling through his consciousness. He saw flashes, memories not his own, a child giggling, a comedian on a stage, soldiers laughing beside a fire. Emotions, warmth, joy, absurdity, things his kind had erased eons ago. For the first time in centuries, Jato felt something inside him crack. A strange sound escaped his throat, short, rough, uncontrolled. It took him a moment to realize what it was. He was laughing. The control chamber fell silent. Every Valkyrian present stared at him in disbelief, a commander of the Dominion, laughing like a primitive animal. He forced himself to stop, trembling. "Shut down the control fields," he said weakly. "We are done here." But the laughter didn't stop echoing. It was everywhere now, in every corner of the psychic network, spreading faster than thought. Down below, humanity didn't know exactly what had happened. All they knew was that the alien pressure in their minds was fading, and that their laughter had somehow driven the invaders back. On every channel, soldiers cheered. Pilots shouted into their comms, "Guess they can't handle a good joke." The phrase "mind control proof" became a joke itself, spreading like wildfire. Jator stood at the viewport, watching the blue planet spin beneath him. He had crushed countless civilizations, but none had ever done this. None had ever made him feel powerless. "They are not logical," he whispered to Jal. "They should not exist." And yet, he looked out at Earth, glowing with light, alive with sound and chaos. They laugh in the face of gods. And as the fleet drifted in retreat, the sound of human laughter followed them, echoing through every broken psychic channel. The perfect weapon had failed, and for the first time in Valkyrian history, they realized what true fear felt like. Not the fear of death or pain, but the fear of something they could never control, the human mind. The war that was supposed to end in silence had turned into a storm of noise. The Valkyrians, once feared masters of the mind, now found their hive connection filled with madness, waves of laughter, strange human songs, and flashes of absurd memories. What began as confusion soon became chaos. Their psychic network trembled under the weight of human unpredictability. And while the aliens tried to understand what went wrong, humanity began to strike back. In orbit, above the wounded planet, The Earth Defense Fleet regrouped. Their ships were battered, their systems strained, but their spirits burned brighter than ever. On the command bridge of the flagship Erebus, Captain Mira Sol stood before the main viewport, her face lit by the glow of blue plasma storms. Around her, the crew worked quickly, patching damaged systems and sharing quiet laughter through their exhaustion. "They tried to crawl inside our heads," she said, her voice steady. "So let's show them what lies there." The room fell silent for a heartbeat, then filled with grins. Everyone knew what she meant. Down on Earth, scientists at the Global Research Corps had made a discovery. Dr. Aaron Malik, a neurospecialist, stood before a flickering monitor, his eyes wide as data streamed across the screen. "It's the laughter," he whispered. "It's not just emotion, it's a frequency pattern." His assistant frowned. "A frequency?" Malik nodded rapidly. "Yes, humor creates chaotic brainwaves that jump between predictable patterns. The alien's psychic control relies on order, structure, but laughter breaks that structure apart." He turned toward the communications officer. "And we can use it." Within hours, humanity began transmitting signals, not distress calls, not battle orders, but sound. Music, jokes, comedy clips, and laughter loops were beamed into space. What began as an experiment became a weapon. Radio towers, satellites, and starships, all synchronized into one global broadcast. A wall of joyful noise. Every joke, every laugh, every absurd meme in human history echoed through the void. On the Valkyrian side, the effect was immediate and devastating. Their psychic frequencies started fracturing as they were flooded by this new signal. Soldiers clutched their heads as alien minds, once perfectly synchronized, began to spin apart in confusion. Their collective unity dissolved into fragmented emotions. Some cried, some screamed. A few began laughing without understanding why. On board the Valkyrian dreadnought Mindspire, the telepathic officers struggled to hold formation. "They're attacking our thoughts," one screamed. "It's not physical, it's something else." But the truth was worse. Humanity had turned their own weapon against them. Up in orbit, Captain Mira's fleet moved. The Erebus led the charge, its engines burning bright as missiles streaked through the dark. The aliens' coordination was gone. Without psychic unity, their movements were clumsy and slow. Human pilots, fueled by adrenaline and absurd confidence, flew straight through enemy lines. "Don't think too hard," one shouted over the comms, laughing as plasma bolts flew past his fighter. "They can't read what doesn't make sense." In the control room of the Erebus, Mira smiled. She understood something now. The Valkyrians weren't gods. They were prisoners of their own perfection. Their minds, so used to calm and order, couldn't handle humanity's chaos. And so, humanity gave them chaos in its purest form. Dr. Malik's team developed what they called cognitive noise emitters, small devices that broadcast loops of unpredictable human humor directly into psychic space. Soldiers nicknamed them laugh bombs. When deployed, they released a flood of sound, shrieking laughter, nonsensical jokes, and unpredictable frequencies. Wherever one detonated, Valkyrian forces fell apart, clutching their skulls as their minds twisted in confusion. The battle reports were surreal. Alien dreadnoughts collided with each other after hearing distorted snippets of old human cartoons. Psychic commanders broke down mid-fight, muttering random human words they couldn't understand. One even broadcasted in a perfect imitation of human tone, "knock, knock," before his consciousness collapsed entirely. For the first time in the war, humanity had the advantage. Mira stood at her post, watching the alien fleet scatter like frightened birds. "Broadcast the signal again," she ordered. Her communications officer grinned. "Which one, ma'am?" "All of them," she replied. "Let's make them laugh until they break." The fleet's transmission towers lit up. Every frequency carried waves of humor, from ancient Earth comedies to the loudest, silliest laughter humanity could produce. Space itself seemed to hum with chaotic joy. The Valkyrian psychic net shattered completely. Ships spun out of formation, their telepaths incapacitated by emotional overload. In the middle of the chaos, Captain Mira opened a personal transmission to the Valkyrian commander. Her face appeared on his holographic display, calm but defiant. "You tried to control our minds," she said. "Bad idea. You can't control something that doesn't even control itself." Then she smiled and laughed. That sound struck harder than any weapon. Jator's vision blurred as the laughter rippled through the psychic link. his control dissolved. His soldiers' thoughts filled with images they couldn't stop seeing. Humans laughing in the rain, children giggling, people making jokes in the middle of war. It broke everything the Velcrians believed about power and order. The once mighty Velcrian Empire, proud masters of thought and order, was unraveling. Their hive mind, once flawless and calm, now trembled under the weight of human laughter, echoing through every psychic frequency. What began as static and noise had become a virus of emotion, uncontainable, unpredictable, unstoppable. For a species that had built its entire power upon discipline and perfect mental unity, this was not war. It was infection. It was chaos. And it was spreading fast. On the flagship Dominion of Thought, Commander Jator paced before the glowing psychic conduits that pulsed like living veins across the walls. He could feel it, the cracks in the hive. Entire battalions had fallen silent, not because they were dead, but because their minds had dissolved into confusion. Across the network, alien soldiers were speaking in human words, repeating nonsense phrases they didn't understand. One kept muttering, "Knock, knock. Who's there?" over and over until his psychic link collapsed. It was madness. It was humiliation. "They're collapsing from within," whispered Jal, the scientist who once believed his people's telepathy was invincible. "Our mental stability is gone. The humans' emotional waves are inside every one of us." Jator gritted his teeth, trying to focus, but even his own thoughts were flickering with laughter that wasn't his. A sound that came and went like an echo in his skull, mocking, endless. "We are the Velcrians," he hissed. "We do not fall to primitives." But deep inside he knew the truth. They were falling faster than any enemy had ever fallen. Across the fleet, chaos spread. The psychic command centers that once united the Empire now broadcast only confusion. Soldiers forgot their orders, engineers sabotaged their own ships, and entire vessels drifted aimlessly, filled with alien voices laughing uncontrollably. It wasn't real laughter, not joy. It was the desperate echo of minds that no longer knew what was real. The humans had turned their humor into a weapon sharper than any blade. Their memes, jokes, and absurd videos, tiny fragments of digital noise, had infected the Velcrian consciousness like wildfire. The hive that once thought with one mind now thought with a million different, conflicting ones. On the ship Mindspire, a psychic lieutenant fell to his knees, clutching his head as flashes of strange images filled his vision. Humans slipping on ice, animals dancing. Strange phrases like, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee." He screamed, "Make it stop! The noise, the madness!" But the more he fought it, the louder it became. The human thoughts weren't like structured commands. They were wild, bouncing between joy and despair, fear and amusement in seconds. To the Velcrians it was unbearable. To the humans it was life itself. Jal tried to warn his commander. "We can't fight this. It's not a virus, it's a concept. They've weaponized unpredictability. The more we resist, the stronger it becomes." Jator slammed his fist into the control console. "Then find a way to silence them," he roared. But silence was no longer possible. The hive channels were bursting with human sound. Every attempt to block the psychic frequencies only amplified them. The Velcrian network, built on perfect synchronization, was feeding on its own collapse. Then something even stranger happened. Velcrians began to smile. Their facial muscles, unused for such expression, twitched and curved. Some began laughing out loud, an alien broken sound. Others simply froze, trapped between horror and confusion. Their perfect discipline was gone. Generals forgot their duties. Fleet commanders began questioning why they were fighting at all. The laughter had done what no weapon ever could. It had made them feel. And feeling was destroying them. Inside his command chamber, Jator felt the hives collapse through every fiber of his being. He saw flashes of his soldiers, some dancing, others staring into space, lost in human visions. He saw entire planets under Velcrian control suddenly go quiet as their psychic governors fell to the infection. He turned to Jal, who stood silent, eyes dim with despair. "This is the end, isn't it?" Jator said quietly. "We thought emotion was weakness. But emotion has conquered us." Jal nodded slowly. "We built an empire on silence. They are tearing it down with noise." On Earth, humanity didn't yet realize how deeply they had broken their enemy. The defense networks were alive with celebration. Laughter and victory songs filled every broadcast. Soldiers danced on the ruins of alien drones. The joke that had started it all, "They think they can control us?" had become a rallying cry across the planet. In space, the humans pushed forward. Their ships, guided by instinct and chaos, struck through the disorganized alien lines. The Valkyrians couldn't even coordinate defense maneuvers anymore. Their psychic commands were scrambled, their targeting systems malfunctioning as human humor kept interfering with their telepathic synchronization. One alien dreadnought tried to retreat, but its crew started arguing over a joke that didn't exist. The ship drifted into another vessel, both erupting into flames. Across the network, alien voices cried out in panic, but behind every scream, there was that haunting sound, human laughter, echoing forever. Then came the moment that sealed the Valkyrians' fate. The Queen of the Hive herself, the great Mind Mother whose consciousness spanned light years, finally felt the human infection reach her. She had never known emotion. Her mind was eternal, cold, perfect. But now she saw visions, humans smiling, children playing, comedians on glowing stages. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Queen smiled. Her voice echoed through the hive, weak but clear. "What is this feeling?" And somewhere deep within the shared psychic network, a human joke reached her mind. She didn't understand the words, but she laughed. And that single sound shattered the unity of the Valkyrian Empire forever. Jator fell to his knees, feeling the hive mind die around him. The Queen's laughter rippled through every soldier, every ship, every thought. Their empire dissolved in seconds, undone not by weapons, not by power, but by something infinitely more dangerous, a joke they couldn't understand. As silence fell at last, the only sound left in the dark was human laughter, echoing through the wreckage of ships and minds alike. Humanity had done the impossible. They had made gods bleed and laugh while doing it. In the aftermath of the great psychic collapse, the galaxy fell eerily silent. The mighty Valkyrian fleet, once the most feared force in existence, now drifted among the stars like ghosts. Their ships, dim and lifeless, no longer pulsed with the glow of telepathic energy. What remained of the hive mind was scattered fragments of thoughts, broken laughter echoing faintly in the void. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Valkyrians were truly alone in their own heads. And amid that silence, one question consumed them all. Why had humanity survived? Jarl, one of the few Valkyrian scientists still capable of coherent thought, spent days studying the psychic wreckage. His mind ached from the lingering noise, the echoes of human jokes still bouncing in the corners of his thoughts. He accessed the captured human data archives, searching through endless videos, stories, and strange cultural records. There was one thing he saw everywhere: humor. Laughter in war, laughter in pain, laughter in loss. It was irrational, illogical, and yet it was everywhere. "They laugh at everything," he murmured, his voice trembling. "Even at death." His human liaison, Dr. Aaron Malik, now aboard the crippled Valkyrian vessel as part of a peace team, nodded with a faint smile. "That's kind of the point," he said quietly. "We don't laugh because things are funny. We laugh because they're not. It's how we survive." Jarl turned toward him, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Survive? How does one survive through madness?" Malik chuckled softly. "By embracing it." He leaned closer, pointing to the screen showing waves of chaotic brain activity. "Your species depends on order. One mind, one purpose. But we're different. We adapt through chaos. Every time the universe tried to break us, we made a joke out of it. War, disease, disaster. Humor was our weapon long before you arrived." Jarl processed this slowly, his tendrils curling in confusion. "Then good laughter is not weakness." "No," Malik said, smiling. "It's armor." The Valkyrian's mind reeled. He began replaying the memories of the invasion, their psychic waves bouncing off human minds, twisting into nonsense. Every command, every thought distorted by laughter. He had believed it was resistance, but now he understood. It wasn't resistance at all. It was transformation. The human mind didn't fight control. It absorbed it, changed it, turned it into something meaningless and absurd. "You took our domination," Jarl whispered, "and turned it into a joke." Malik nodded. "You see, control only works if the victim takes it seriously. But humans, we make fun of fear itself. The moment you tried to take over our minds, we stopped being afraid of you. That's why your weapon failed. You wanted obedience. We gave you comedy. Giles stared out the viewport at the broken fleet, his thoughts heavy. He realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a human defense mechanism. It was evolution. Their entire species had evolved around chaos, around emotional unpredictability. Every time their civilization should have fallen, they found a way to laugh and start again. They didn't seek peace or perfection. They sought meaning through the absurd. He turned back to Malik, voice trembling. Do you even fear anything? The human smiled faintly. Of course we do. But fear is boring. Laughter makes it bearable. Those words hit Giles harder than any psychic blast. As part of the new peace accords, Giles traveled to Earth. He walked through its cities, surrounded by laughter that filled every street. Children played, people joked, and music spilled from open windows. He found it unsettling but also beautiful. He asked a human researcher one question. How did you know laughter would save you? The woman smiled. We didn't, she said. We just laughed because we refused to cry. That night, as Giles stood under the human sky, he heard laughter echoing from a nearby park. It was simple, genuine, full of life, and for the first time in his long existence, he felt something unfamiliar, a strange light warmth spreading through his chest. Without meaning to, the corners of his mouth twitched upward. A laugh escaped him. It was quiet, awkward, alien, but it was real. And in that moment, Giles understood the true secret of humanity. It wasn't technology. It wasn't power. It was the ability to find joy in despair, to create light in the darkest void, to turn pain into something that made sense, even if only through a joke. He looked toward the stars, where the remnants of his empire floated silently, and whispered, they feared what they couldn't control. But perhaps they should have learned to laugh. And somewhere far above, through the void of space where no sound should travel, the faint echo of human laughter lingered still, proof that even in a universe ruled by logic and power, madness and humor could win. Humanity's secret was no secret at all. It was simply what made them human. The message spread like wildfire across the stars, from the shattered Velcrian Empire to the distant colonies of the Zir. Every race in the known galaxy received the same strange signal. It wasn't a call to arms. It wasn't a threat. It was a sound, raw, unpredictable, and human. Laughter. It rolled through the void like thunder, echoing from planet to planet, carried on human communication relays that no one could block or silence. Some called it madness. Others called it the most dangerous weapon ever unleashed. But to the humans it was simply the sound of survival. In the Galactic Council, chaos reigned. Dozens of species argued across the Great Chamber, their voices overlapping in panic. They've infected the psychic network, screamed a telepath from the HFY Dominion. Our thought relays are filled with nonsense. Jokes, music. They're laughing. Another delegate, shaking in disbelief, added, it's spreading through every shared consciousness system. The humans have destabilized the grid. They're corrupting pure thought. The Velcrian representative Giles sat silently at his station, his eyes dim with memory. He knew what was happening. Humanity wasn't trying to conquer anyone. They were teaching the galaxy something it had forgotten, how to be free. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity had entered a new era. The war that almost ended them had united them instead. Cities rebuilt faster than anyone thought possible. Soldiers who once fought in silence now told stories of the Mind War, laughing as they recalled how they'd resisted an empire not with guns, but with jokes. Remember when that Velcrian commander tried to order us to kneel? One veteran said during a broadcast. And someone shouted, sorry, I'm on lunch break. They never recovered from that. The crowd roared with laughter, and that sound, pure human, unstoppable, was transmitted live across the galaxy. The more the other races listened, the stranger things became. Entire psychic networks began to show signs of change. The rigid telepaths of the HFY Dominion began to experience humor for the first time. They didn't understand it at first, why a joke could make their thoughts ripple and bend, but once one of them laughed, the rest couldn't stop. Laughter spread like wildfire through their collective minds, breaking centuries of mental discipline. The stoic Driel, known for their emotionless logic, started writing comedies. Even the warlike Racon tribes paused their endless battles to listen to human transmissions filled with stories, songs, and stand-up routines. What began as an invasion ended as a transformation. Jal watched it all unfold from an orbiting station above Earth. He had become humanity's unlikely ally, working with Dr. Malik to translate human humor into a universal frequency. "You're sure about this?" Malik asked, his hand hovering over the console. "Once we activate it, every psychic channel will be permanently altered." Jal nodded slowly. "Your laughter has already changed us. This will only make it permanent." He hesitated for a moment. "But are you not afraid of what might happen?" Malik smiled. "Afraid? Sure, but fear's boring. Let's make history instead." When they activated the signal, the stars themselves seemed to shimmer. Across every telepathic mind, across every neural net and communication stream, a burst of chaotic, joyful energy spread. It wasn't destructive, it was liberating. Races that had lived under the rule of thought control, order, and hierarchy suddenly felt the strange, dizzying feeling of individuality. For the first time they questioned, they joked, they felt alive. And in the middle of that psychic storm, a familiar phrase echoed across all channels. "They think they can control us?" This time it wasn't just humans saying it. On Velcrian Prime, where the last of the hive spires still stood, the once great telepathic emperor stirred from his long silence. His mind reached out instinctively to reassert control, but what came back was laughter. His subjects, once his extensions, were now individuals, laughing uncontrollably. "Stop!" he cried into the psychic void. "This is chaos!" But his words dissolved into the noise, replaced by an echo of his own voice warped into a joke. "Chaos? More like freedom," the emperor screamed, but his cry was drowned out by laughter so vast it shook the skies. Back on Earth, Malik looked up at the stars as the transmission faded. He could almost feel the universe shifting. "You think they'll forgive us?" he asked quietly. Jal stood beside him, the faint trace of a smile on his alien face. "There is nothing to forgive," he said softly. "You gave us something we did not know we needed. You gave us imperfection." The two stood in silence, listening to the faint echo of laughter coming through the comms, millions of voices, alien and human alike, laughing together. For the first time in galactic history, every species shared something deeper than fear or logic. They shared joy, and in that strange unity, a new truth emerged. Control was fragile, but laughter was eternal. What began as an invasion had become evolution. Humanity hadn't just survived. They had changed the nature of consciousness itself. Across the stars, the once orderly civilizations of the galaxy now lived in glorious, unpredictable chaos. And every time an alien somewhere laughed for the first time, they whispered the same words with awe and amusement. They tried to control humanity's minds. And humanity taught us to laugh.